Right, hello once again, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, and here in Glasgow, we are back live with UKSG Blue 2023 in Aid of Crisis. We're going to jump right into our next run here, which will be Ben 10 Power Trip being run by the ever delightful Melon Keeper. Take it away, my friend.
Alright, this is Ben 10 Power Trip. My name is Lily. This is a 3D platformer with open world beat 'em up segments, and we'll start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the reason I do that intro before I start the game is that right at the start here, we have a pretty big glitch. We quit out immediately after the first cutscene, and when we go back into the game, it gives us all of the aliens unlocked right at the start. I have no idea why this happened. I do know that it was patched into the game, because when playing on the 1.0 version, it doesn't work. But unfortunately, it's not as game-breaking as it sounds. As soon as we talk to this NPC, he takes them all away from us again. But it does allow us to skip a cutscene by jumping over this fence. Jump off of the tree. Skips a cutscene. But yeah, even though we're playing as Accelerate now, don't have him unlocked. As soon as we transform into a different alien, we're going to lose him. The general structure of this game is that we will unlock all of the various aliens throughout the run by doing these void segments. Here we're going to unlock Heat Blast. This is probably the most vanilla void segment there is. For most of the aliens, when you go to unlock them, the end of the level is available to enter from the start, but for Heat Blast, you need to activate all of the torches for it to open up. So, like I said, there's some beat 'em up segments. We're not going to get to see that right here, but we're basically in the tutorial area. You can run, you can jump. Heat Blast has a double jump. That's kind of his movement ability. And he can light these torches, which is used for a few of the puzzles later on in the run as well. This is the first open world Ben 10 game, and I actually missed something there. You can do a quick triple jump thing off of the tower there. The way it works is that if you jump onto a slope with Heat Blast, it refreshes your double jump even if you haven't landed. But yeah, there's 3 areas in this game. There's the one we're in now, which is the forest area, which is also connected to a town that we don't see until later. There's a city area where we unlock Accelerate, and there's an icy area where we unlock Diamond Head. I'm going to talk about Ben for a bit. Ben has a scooter. He has no attacks. He has a normal sort of average stats in general. His scooter's kind of interesting though. The way it's supposed to work is that when you're going downhill you gain speed, when you're going uphill you lose speed, but the way it ends up working is that anytime he is displaced downwards, so if he falls off of a ledge for example, he gains a lot of speed. So you'll see me go for that throughout the run. We're going to look for places where we're able to fall down using the scooter. And over here you'll get to see another example of that Heat Blast triple jump thing. I'm going to jump onto that slope, and you see I managed to do multiple double jumps without actually landing. The combat in this game is pretty simple. For the most part we're just going to spam one combo with each alien. But there is some interesting bits to it. You can transform into an alien at any point basically. And if you try to transform into Ben during combat, you see it cancels my attack animation. And that can be pretty useful for if a combo ends with a lot of lag, we can quickly transform to Ben. And because we're not allowed to play as Ben during combat segments, it'll just cancel our animation, make it really fast to get back into the combat. Coming up on the end of the tutorial here, there's a little side questy thing that we have to do first. There's this side villain in the Ben 10 reboot called Lord Decibel, and we have to crash one of his concerts because he's like taking over the world or something. And in the context of this game, this is just a side mission, but we do have to do one of these for the tutorial to end. And I've tried to skip this so many times because if we can skip talking to Ranger Ryan at the beginning, then we will be able to keep our aliens throughout the whole game, which would save several minutes. But doesn't seem like it's possible. The tutorial's actually really difficult to crack. I can jump on these pink tiles. Normally they would send you back to the beginning of the level, but as long as you mash hard enough, you can just jump on them. You have a few frames when you're landing where you can jump, but it doesn't count as grounded, so that's why that works. So yeah, this is the end of the tutorial. There's actually one more tutorial mission after this, but for some reason, after we get it, if we just quit out of the game and press continue, then it'll deselect the mission. So it doesn't like finish it for us, but it means that because we're not in a mission anymore, we're able to talk to the NPCs that are out in the world. But to get out in the world, you have to beat the tutorial, so how do we do that? Well, because of Ben's scooter gaining speed when it falls down, like a cliff, for example, we're actually able to jump over the death plane by falling off of this boulder over here. It's a little bit precise. We only need to do it once in the run. And there we go. Skipped over the death plane. We're going to play the whole rest of the game out of bounds. We never actually beat the tutorial. It's a pretty big death plane. It just so happens that it doesn't cover any of the major areas. And it actually becomes useful later when we want to go back to the tutorial. We don't need to go all the way. And you can see as I'm going along this bridge here, if I go on the side, I get pushed up and then down, and that will boost my speed occasionally. Going around this bend, there's some stones that I can get a boost off of as well. And you'll notice there's just like a lot of little areas like this when we're on Ben's scooter where you can gain a little bit of extra speed just by having some good awareness. So this is the first major area of the game. This game kind of routed itself because Accelerate's the fastest alien, so in a speedrun, of course, we want to have Accelerate first. So we just did this area first, and then, oh, it turns out there's another alien that does a huge glitch that's needed to glitch the third area, so we have to do that area second. So it really fell into place quite neatly, and even before all of the glitches and stuff were discovered, we pretty much did everything in the same order anyway. So now we need to go to the factory. The easiest way to do this is to jump into the river, and it just teleports us to where we're supposed to be. There are a lot of missions that are like this, but this is the only one where it's actually faster to go outside the bounds of the mission than just to go to where you're meant to be in the first place. So we get a little bit more scooter movement here. Coming up in the factory is actually the only proper wall clip out of bounds that we use in the run. Since it's like open world and there's a lot of flags that dictate the order you do missions in, there's never really a use for clipping through walls, even though it is very easy to do in this game. But here, because we're in a factory, which is a very closed space, it's actually useful for us to clip through the wall here. The basic idea of the factory is that you're supposed to solve some puzzles, move some platforms, press these buttons, but by clipping through the wall we can do the whole factory backwards. And doing it backwards means it's much easier to get to the buttons. We don't need to fight any enemies or move any platforms. We can go through this grate backwards. It's coded to only break from the side that we're on, so it's kind of lucky that it works that way. And coming up here we unlock Accelerate. We're going to do a little swag strat. This doesn't save any time, but when you press the button, a portal spawns exactly where I was standing. The cutscene for pressing the button still plays, but now it plays in the void, so it's completely devoid from the context that it would usually be in. So Accelerate is the coolest alien, and we're going to use him a lot. If you watched Classic Ben 10, you'll be very familiar with Accelerate. He is the blue blur, the fastest thing alive. He has the ability to run really fast. Even his like base walking speed is faster than Ben's scooter most of the time, but his running speed really takes it to the next level. He's also a really useful combat alien. He has two combos that we're going to make a lot of use of. There's one where he has like an area of effect, so he can hit multiple enemies at once. And there's one where he moves around while he attacks, so that we can hit multiple enemies before the combo ends. He also has the ability to do large amounts of damage and one-shot enemies by running straight into them. And that's really broken, but it's also sort of tricky because the handling on his running is pretty difficult. The way that I've kind of come around to doing it in runs is that I'm going to start running, then stop running to change direction, because it's easier than changing direction normally, because trying to like turn in a full U direction is pretty tricky. So that's the factory. This game actually has stat upgrades, as you'll see here. After you beat a mission, and sometimes just randomly, you get stat upgrades. We're going to put them all into power. The 3 upgrades are toughness, power, and luck. Power just increases your damage output, luck just increases your chance of getting a critical, and toughness increases your health. Power is really the only useful one. You're never at risk of dying. Fun thing about this mission is that right at the start here, there used to be a phone call from Gwen and also a cutscene. If you took the phone call at the same time the cutscene triggered, it would soft lock your save, and you wouldn't be able to beat the game. I discovered this a few months ago, and then it got patched out, and the way they patched it was just by removing the phone call and the cutscene, which means it was just... this is kind of awkward. So what I normally do here is I push them off the side of the building and they despawn, but that one got stuck on the side. So yeah, that's just like a free 11 to 12 second time save. The current world record was done on the pre-patch version because I just haven't been grinding the game much, but there you go. Free 11 seconds for anyone who wants it. The cutscene's actually still in the game. They just moved the trigger area to be a much smaller area. And we actually do activate it at one point of the run, but it gets played on top of another cutscene, so it doesn't lose any time. So the time save is real. It's not just like they moved it to a later part of the run. It is real. So what we're doing now is we're collecting symbols. They're like a passcode to unlock the door to Hex's base. Hex is the main like villain. He's a magician. He wants to take over like the world or something. I haven't really read the dialogue of this game because it's made for 3-year-olds, but that's the basic plot outline, is that we're stopping an evil magician from taking over. The symbols are the same every time, but we still have to get them because the mission structure in this game is very, very linear. There's only like one time we get to skip anything. So we still need to like do it. Here you'll see me using the one-shot ability on these enemies as much as possible. When I started running this game, I thought it was too difficult to do consistently, and then I like actually tried it and it wasn't that bad. And that's symbolic sightings. Now we're going to put the code in, and this is the first example of some like real RNG in the run. It doesn't affect much. You can at most lose like maybe 2 to 4 seconds. But basically when we're putting in this passcode, it's on like a revolving slate, and the passcode is the same every time, but the number of times you need to press the X button to get the symbol that you're looking for is somewhat randomized. It can be the right symbol right from the start, or you might need to press up to 3 times. In general, you're looking at like one of them will be correct and the other 2 you need to switch. Again, not a big example of RNG. There are more important examples, but in general this run is light on RNG. All of the enemy AI is deterministic, except for like some boss patterns, but they're all like reactable anyway, so you're not losing time to them. It's a weird cutscene because you can move during it, but I got stuck on the geometry because I couldn't see what I was doing. When you're fighting in these enclosed spaces, a lot of the time you just like don't get the one-hit kills because you're going to walk into walls. Accelerate has enough damage output to where you're really not losing time if you do go for the attacks as long as you're hitting 2 or 3 enemies at once. That kind of makes up for the fact that you're not one-shotting all of them. And now we have the first chase segment. There's a lot of these throughout the run, but basically we're going to chase Hex. But we're not going to do it the vanilla way. The vanilla way would be following him around the city for about 2 minutes, going over some cool scripted parkour segments. But what we do in the run is we just turn around, run the opposite direction, and for some reason it teleports us straight to the end. None of the other chase segments work in this way, it's just this one, but I'm really thankful that it does work this way because it saves about 1 minute and 50 seconds compared to doing it vanilla. And then we'll be coming up on Shock Rock. Shock Rock's the only reboot alien in this game, so like Accelerate and Heat Blast and stuff, they were in classic Ben 10. If you're my age, you probably watched the show and remember them. Also, there's a glitch in this tower where the game audio's really loud, but we're not going to be here for long, so don't worry too much about that. Yeah, Shock Rock's a reboot alien, so you might not be familiar with him, but he's actually pretty cool. He's a guy made of electricity. He has like arcing thunder attacks, and he can grapple onto light posts and stuff. It's pretty cool. And here you get to see another example of how the void segments are not really played in the intended way. There's a puzzle, quote unquote, that we're supposed to solve where we use one of Shock Rock's abilities to open a door. But these are very open spaces where you can just walk around the doors and ignore that part, which is pretty cool. When you combine Shock Rock's grapple ability with other aliens, though, it becomes really powerful. Because when you're on the way up, you gain a lot of momentum. And when you switch to a different alien, you keep all of that momentum and you can fling yourself up. And it just so happens that we have to climb a very big tower right now. And we can do it in only 3 jumps if we're good at the game. Okay, I mean 4, that's close enough. And so each area in this game kind of has a theme. The theme for this city is fame. When we went to the factory, it's because we wanted to write a newspaper article. We want to get that published. And right now we're about to help a group of kids get on the radio. I don't know why this is relevant to the plot, because I didn't read the dialogue, but I assure you that it's very important. So now we're going to go hack a radio tower to get these kids on air. But, you know, their jams are actually pretty good, so let's not judge a book by its cover. So here we have the introduction of a new enemy. So far you've seen the little guys that are just like the Goombas of this game. There's also another type of enemy that shoots projectiles that don't do any damage. And there's the enemies that are shielded from the front. This segment introduces the most annoying kind of enemies, which are the flying ones. Because you can't do combos when you're in the air, you have to kind of wait for them to land on the ground, or just like pick them off one attack at a time, which is really slow. So you got to pay attention to what the flying enemies are doing, because they're kind of your priority during most of these early game fights. At a certain point, you just become able to one-shot them because the flying enemies are actually really like low health compared to the other ones. But right now, we don't have that kind of damage output. And I fell. So yeah, here we're just climbing the radio tower. We're going to use another Shock Rock launch to get up here. Like so. That's a better way to do it. There is like an invisible wall here, so you kind of like have to grapple with Shock Rock or go around the tower, because if you try to go up through the hole in the tower with Accelerate, a lot of the time you will just bonk your head on some sort of invisible geometry. There's a lot of weird geometry in this game. Coming up here we have a jump where if you do it too slowly, like I just did, you get trolled and you lose. But if you do it fast, then you don't get trolled. See, that's the thing. Whenever you respawn, the camera position's different. You gotta react to that. Here we have another chase segment. We're going to chase like a comic book delivery truck because that's really important. This is another segment that we don't do vanilla. We're just going to run straight to the end. We have to take a pretty careful path to make sure that we're in range of the vehicle the whole time, but it ends up being a really short segment because we can just run around where the vehicle is going. So again, we have the flying enemies here. I actually did pretty well using the one-shot ability here. This is one of the segments where it can be kind of difficult. Shockrock also has the ability to grapple enemies back down to him, which is really useful in any percent. This is all bosses. The difference between all bosses and any percent is like a week after my run got accepted to this marathon, someone found a glitch that skipped all of the game. You just skip to the last mission and you don't have any upgrades, so you're always at risk of dying and you have no damage output, but it's still like 16 minutes long because you skip the whole game. So that's pretty cool. That segment isn't in the game, but a lot of the flying enemies can be quite troublesome just because you don't have the damage output to deal with them and you're in the final mission of the game. Now, this is a licensed game, so it wouldn't be fit, you know, maybe you've seen the SpongeBob movie game with the Patty Wagon segments. Every good licensed game has a segment which is completely unrelated to the rest of the gameplay. Here I give you 5 out of 40 newspapers delivered. We have about 2 minutes. If you have anything to read or say, feel free to fill the time.
Absolutely, I can do so. I would like to shout out why we are doing this wonderful event. We are doing it to support Crisis, a charity supporting people out of homelessness for good. They achieve this through education, training and support with housing, employment and health. 90% of your donations will go towards supporting Crisis and 10% will go towards UKSG's future events. If, however, you need a bit more incentivization to open up your wallet, rather than just being a fabulous human being, of course, then I have good news. For the next run will be a game based on Ghostbusters, for which you can select which Ghostbuster and what they will wear. We have options: Ray, Egon, Winston, Lewis, or Peter. Currently, Ray is in the lead at $20, with Egan and Winston trailing behind with $10 each, and whoever it is will currently be wearing pink, with $25 ahead of the next option. So if you want to see something different, I think you know what to do. With that, though, I will throw it back to the run.
Alright, so we're coming up on the end of this newspaper delivery segment, but I do have a bit of time. I just want to shout out Woven. He's not active in the Ben 10 community anymore, but when this game had no runners, he discovered a lot of what I'm going to show off today in terms of glitches and skips. I didn't really discover a lot, I just like optimized the game, and so yeah, shout out to Woven. And here we have our next chase segment. It's actually a follow segment if you read the fine print. It's basically a chase segment. It turns out that the end is right behind us when we start, so we just go straight to there. Here we have another Shockrock launch segment. This one's actually kind of hard. There's a death plane below us. It's really easy to fall into, but taking a pretty specific route, we can be quite safe. We have to jump on. Oh no, fall down there. It incurs this cutscene. This is the cutscene that got cut from the game, basically. Usually you don't see this in a run, but if you do die there, then you get put in range of the cutscene trigger. Bit unfortunate, but like I said, this can be a bit tricky. We have to get some pretty good height off of the launches or take an alternative path, which is what I'm doing now. If we land on this building, we're safe though. It's outside the range of the death plane, and then we can get on to the first boss. There are 4 bosses in the game, including the final boss. And the basic structure of how these bosses work is that there will be 3 crystals guarded by enemies. Defeat the enemies, break the crystals, and then you get to fight the boss one-on-one in a weakened state. We're very lucky here. We have Accelerate. We're limited to only 2 aliens during any given boss fight, and this is the only one, excluding the final boss, where we have Accelerate. And you might remember me saying something about Accelerate being able to one-shot enemies, and the bosses are not immune to that, so hopefully I'll be able to show that off today. It's pretty simple. The way that the ability kind of works is that when I'm running with Accelerate and I'm making contact with an enemy, they take a massive amount of damage every frame. But some enemies have like rectangular bodies, which makes it really easy to do. Some have sort of cylindrical bodies, which makes it easy to fall off of. Like there. A pretty quick boss fight, but I didn't quite one-shot it because I did slip around the side there, and that's because the bosses have cylindrical bodies. So throughout the course of the first area, which we've just cleared, I've been paying attention to gather at least 450 coins. That's because there's a merchant called Carla Clams who will sell damage upgrades to us. They're temporary, but we're going to buy enough that we have one during each boss fight. And the reason we do that is because although our damage output goes up throughout the course of the run, we'll never have quite the kill power that Accelerate gives us. So it's very handy to get that extra damage with the items. Over here we've got a heat blast jump where I've got to be kind of precise. There we go. The reason that's hard is because it's a really steep slope. So there are some parts of the slope that just don't refresh your double jump. It's just another one of the like weird geometry things in this game. There are bits of the world that just aren't connected to each other and you can fall through the whole world. There are bits of the world that you think you should be able to stand on but just push you off. And there are slopes that look like slopes but are actually walls. There we get all the power bars and we get a cool little movement segment here. We're gonna light some piles of leaves on fire, but in the process we're gonna switch between aliens. I actually, the controller I use has buttons on the back, so I can switch between the aliens without moving my finger down to the D-pad. I recommend that for anyone who's not running on keyboard, but if you don't have a controller like that, it's kind of annoying because you do need all of the shoulder buttons, so it's not like you can rebind those. I can't get over this river for some reason. This is another example of like weirdly difficult jumps, and it's just because the collision for Accelerate is from like his face to his feet. So if you like slightly miss a jump, you bonk on the wall with his feet and you don't make it over. Usually I jump really like far behind there, but it also risks just like undershooting the jump. One cool thing about this game is the writing. That guy's an electrician called Earl Electric. That's a funny pun. And here we're going to collect some electrical transformers. I don't really know why for, because at every other point in the in this area we're generally like helping out lumberjacks, and I don't know what lumberjacks use electrical transformers for, but we have to collect them. This kind of works like the boss fights where the electrical transformers are the crystals. After you defeat the enemies, the shield protecting it goes away and you can collect the goodie inside. One thing about the combat that is especially relevant here, I did mention it earlier, but it's the we're in a sort of closed space. I want to basically only attack in straight lines with the running attack, because it just makes it easier to aim. But even then you can see how easy it is to just slip by the enemies. The controls in this game are really sensitive. There's like, it doesn't neutralize to like straight forward at any point. You just have to be holding straight forward to get straight forward, which can be pretty irritating, but it's also like, whatever. It's not a big deal. And so I mentioned lumberjacks. What do we know about lumberjacks? Well, we know that lumberjacks have beards, right? And a lumberjack without a beard is not really a lumberjack at all. And this town has a problem. They have lumberjacks with no beards. How do we solve this problem? We solve it through the miracle of science. We're going to create a concoction that will grow beards for these lumberjacks. This is a little resource collecting mission with Dr. Amphibian. we're going to collect a bunch of different, probably toxic ingredients, definitely toxic ingredients. One of them's called a toxic truffle. And we're just going to put them into a little potion. This can be one of the cooler segments. It's the most RNG dependent segment. All of the ingredients move, and the direction that they move in is completely random. I say completely random. It's random between like 8 different positions that it can go to, but that's still pretty random. These cattails go under the water, so while they're moving, you're not actually able to collect them, which makes them double annoying, because at least with the truffles and the mushrooms, which run away from us, we're able to collect them when they're in midair. We just have to wait for the cattails and then react to when they pop up. Overall, I would say that went pretty well, so let's get this potion. And what did I say earlier about licensed games and gameplay that's completely unrelated to the rest of the game? It would be really cool if they had a beard growing minigame. Maybe that's something to look forward to in the next 5 or 10 seconds. So here we go talk to these lumberjacks, and we get to apply their beards for them. Unfortunately, this is a speedrun, so they're only getting speedrun beards, which means they won't be completely filled out or grown or, you know, good looking, but they get what they get. I think their power comes from the beard, so it should be good enough. So now we get to go unlock Forearms. Forearms is a really powerful alien that gets used a lot in any percent because his base damage is really high. He's also a classic Ben 10 alien, he's a red guy, and he has 4 arms. He has a glitch associated with him that is really powerful. You won't get to see that in this area, but it'll be coming up soon. But he doesn't have any sort of movement abilities. He's really slow and clunky. That's his kind of archetype. Then we go into the barn. We use the Heat Blast ability to burn things down. That's the only way to get into the barn. I've tried other ways, and for some reason, even if you like you're supposed to break this wall with forearms later on, and that's actually really weird. We got an elite enemy here. That's usually more common in endgame. Elite enemies have a slightly different color, they have a gold health bar, and they just have more health. They might have more damage output, but this game's really easy, so I don't even notice how much damage I'm taking most of the time. And here we unlock Forearms. Forearms, like I said, doesn't have any movement abilities, but that doesn't mean we don't completely skip over everything in his Void segment, because we do. There are puzzles that involve moving rocks and breaking down doors, but it turns out that with some clever platforming, you can skip all of that. When you attack in the air, you get pushed forward a little bit. You can also roll / dodge and then jump, which gives you a lot of forward momentum in the air, and it's just enough to clear all of the gaps in Forearms Trial. Coming up here we have a trick that's only used once in the run. We're going to jump off of this enemy's head to get up here. I know that in some games stuff like that is more common, but in this game we only do it once, which I think at least speaks to the variety of tricks we have in the run. There's a lot of stuff in this game that's like saving time, but it's only saving time once in one specific segment, so I think that's kind of neat. So I lied, this area is not just comprised of the swamp and the town, it's also comprised of a completely different town atop that mountain. But we have, we've got the perfect alien for climbing mountains. We've got Heat Blast. You might remember I said before that he can triple jump by jumping on slopes. Well, we can really push that to the next level. The way that this Heat Blast triple jump glitch works is that when you land on a slope, it regains your double jump, but you don't count as grounded, and you don't count as in the air either. It's kind of a weird state in between where you can't do a grounded jump, but it plays your grounded animations, but you can't do an aerial jump, but it does refresh your aerial jump. Basically, by jumping onto a slope and then drifting back off of it, we can double jump back onto the slope to sort of infinitely refresh our jump. And you can do this on basically any slope in the game to gain as much height as you want. There's a lot of mountains to go try it on. It can be a little bit difficult. I know a lot of people struggle to learn this when they're starting out in the game, but it's not that hard. And there you go, that's the Heat Blast double jump trick. We'll use it a couple more times in the run, but that's the first time where you can really see, like, it can just go on forever if you need it. And now we're in the Lumberjack City, and we're going to do all the lumberjacking activities, because it turns out that Red Guy with 4 arms is pretty good at moving lumber, cutting down trees. Here we have a log puzzle segment. We're basically just moving a box around. There is a optimal, least solutions way to do it, and there is the way that I do it. The way that I do it is the fastest because I'm the only one who plays this game. I'm going to switch between 4 arms and Accelerate a lot because just the movement speed of Accelerate makes it worth it, and for some reason I keep pushing it back where it was. You can actually jump while you're holding it, which means that you can, in the middle of pushing the block, you can already be getting ready to jump over the block to go to the other side. And thankfully this segment only has 2 puzzles to it, because I think I might go mad if there was more to it. Now we go to the top of this mountain. Like I said, we got to cut down some trees. And this is another example of, well, you can cancel your animations by switching to different aliens, right? There is a little lumberjack celebration after we cut down trees, but we're able to skip that animation by switching to Accelerate. So check that out. And you can see that they're actually just floating in front of the camera to clap for you. It's kind of interesting, behind the scenes of how the scene is made. That's how it's supposed to look if you don't cancel it. And here we punch this big tree. Doesn't do anything. There's supposed to be a combat segment there, but if you just talk to that guy, they all disappear, which is pretty cool. And now we have another resource gathering segment. We're gonna get some frogs, and because we only have to gather one kind of resource, it's a lot less interesting. There's also a different strategy that I use to collect them, because every time you approach a shining rock, you get 2 frogs that jump out. The grab button to pick up resources is X, the attack button's also X, so if you're playing as Accelerate and you try to grab these frogs, it's very possible that you will attack and get stuck in the lag. So what I'm going to do is transform into Ben so that I can just mash the attack button, and he doesn't have any attacks to get stuck in the animation of. Thankfully we only have to collect 10 frogs. We can kind of make a loop around this lake, and that'll get us enough frogs for the job. But I'm not really sure what this potion is for. And we have another one of those licensed game moments coming up, and I actually transformed into another alien, which is not what I meant to do. The D-pad can be a bit finicky. There we go. Here we have to actually create the potion ourselves, but I think, I might have forgotten the right one. So let's see if that works. Alright, that's not it. How about this? Okay, that's also not it. Let's try add some red to it. That'll probably work. And there we go. It's always the third one that's the correct one. It doesn't matter what actually, the ingredients you use are. As long as they're distinct from each other, it's always the third one that's the correct one. You can actually mess around in there, and there's a lot of different, combinations of potions you can make. Some of them, spawn a bunch of enemies and stuff. You can, fill the whole room with enemies, and it gets kind of, laggy. But yeah, here we use the power bar. Forearms has a really high base damage, so like even though the boss is a tree and it takes extra damage from Heat Blast, it also just takes more damage from Forearms because Forearms has like such a high base damage in the first place. So what we're going to do in this boss fight is we're going to use Heat Blast to set the boss on fire and then use Forearms to do the rest of the damage. This is one of the moments where like the characteristics of the aliens actually matter, because although like either way we're just rolling from objective to objective, Heat Blast is like slightly faster than Forearms running. It's something you don't really think about throughout most of the run because you just use Accelerate to get everywhere, but there are times like this where it's relevant. And this is another bit of RNG. The attack that the boss uses is RNG, and then if it uses the like fireballs from above attack, the location of those fireballs is RNG. It can be really like unlucky and it just interrupts your attacks. You can also die during these fights, but the boss doesn't regain any health if you die, so it's like barely a time loss. And now we come up on one of the biggest skips in the game. Like I said, there are a lot of flags, and the order of missions is very linear, and there's not a lot of ways to skip them, but there is one that we can skip. It's there's a lever we can pull that completes a quest that we don't have yet. And this quest just so happens to be like halfway through the quest line of this next area. So we get to skip a lot of content. This probably saves like 20 minutes. Incidentally, it also skips unlocking one of the 6 aliens. And yes, there's only 6 aliens in this game, despite the fact that it's called Ben 10. It's the first console Ben 10 game since the first console Ben 10 game that had 10 aliens to not have 10 aliens. That's a confusing sentence, but basically people were upset when this game came out that there were not a lot of aliens in it. But to be honest, with how big the world is, you're just going to be using like 2 of them most of the time. You're going to use Accelerate to run around, and you're going to use Heat Blast to double jump. I'm not sure what place the other aliens could have in the game, and it's already a pretty long campaign. Like, it's 6 hours casually easy. Like there's a lot of content in the game, but yeah. Basically we can skip Wrath. Wrath's the Tony the Tiger looking guy. He's also a classic Ben 10 alien, so you might remember him. And yeah, by doing this quest early, we never unlock Wrath. And it really is lucky that Wrath just so happens to be completely like not important to the run. If you tried to do it with no glitches, you would get stuck without Wrath. But we have enough glitches that Wrath is completely unnecessary. Some things do become harder because of the lack of Wrath, but nothing becomes slower. Like, even if we had to unlock Wrath, we wouldn't be using him, because everything that he does is faster if you use another alien to do it. So this is Astrid. She lives on this island, and she tells us our destiny is up in the mountains, so we gotta go investigate that. But this is one of the coolest parts of the run. We're gonna go into co-op for a bit. It's not a proper 1-player 2 controllers run because you're not allowed to use Kevin for combat segments. That's kind of the distinction we make between single player and co-op, which has been a little controversial on the boards, but the only people who have complained are the people who don't play the game, so it didn't really end up mattering. But here we're going to go into 2-player mode. The foundation of this glitch is that when Forearms voids out while he's holding a rock, it gets stuck inside his chest, and then when you pull a rock next to him, he gets pushed up into the air very high. So this is the setup for the glitch. We need to push Ben out of bounds, and then we do the rock launch. We have to get to the top of this tall mountain, and this is a really fast way to do it, which is almost all of the motivation for why this bug was not disallowed in single player. And I think what we're having right here is an FPS issue, so I'm going to turn down the quality of the game. For some reason at low FPS the glitch doesn't work properly, And there I got the glitch, but it stopped halfway through, and that was kind of the signal that maybe the FPS is a problem. So the game won't look as beautiful as it did before, but at least we'll be able to complete the game. And as you can see there, that's the rock launch. It's not the only one in the run. There will be another one. Turns out Destiny was the name of the cat, so that doesn't help us solve our problem. We're going to report back to Astrid and see what she has to say on that. So one theory that I had early on when I was playing this game was that the spawn rate of elite enemies is tied to the number of stat points you have. I don't believe that anymore. I think that it's because of story progress, because in any percent we see a lot of them, even though we don't have any stat upgrades. But now we get to unlock Diamond Head. Diamond Head's another classic Ben 10 alien. And in this game, he's voiced by Roger Craig Smith, the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog. That's pretty cool. They're both blue. Diamond Head's actually like pretty game breaking on the whole, but it's just really slow to unlock him if you don't unlock him last, which means you don't get to see a lot of what he's able to do. It's really easy to clip through walls with Diamond Head because he has the ability to make a sort of like wall, and if you just put that wall close to another wall, a lot of the times that's enough to put Ben through the wall. He also has this ability to like glide above things, and in any like area that involves verticality, that can be very, very powerful. And actually in this void area with Diamond Head, you'll get to see a bit of that, because there is a combat segment here that usually we would have to do, but by doing this jump where we land on the sort of turret of this area, we get to skip it entirely. I almost missed it, which would have been really bad, but yeah, we're good. So yeah, that's Diamond Head. You'll get to see a little bit more of him as the run goes on, but unfortunately not as relevant as I would like to be. He also has a really high base damage, like forearms. He also has a really good area of effect attack, so there are areas where like he would be really powerful if we had him normally, but unfortunately we don't have him for most of the run. And so in each area, Hex sort of has like a base where he hangs out. The city, he was hanging out in the fountain. In the swamp, he was hanging out with Dr. Amphibian. And in the snowy area we're at now, he's hanging out in this hotel. And we're going to commit a crime. We're going to just like enter his hotel through the window, which is definitely like some sort of crime. But it doesn't matter because he's evil and we're a kid. In here, he has a map. I don't know what the map tells us. You can't look at the map, but it has some sort of lore implication. And then we go back to Astrid. Coming up next, we have a really cool movement segment. It's in vanilla, you're supposed to do it basically all with Diamond Head, but by doing some pretty precise jumps that look easy, but because of the geometry in this game, can actually be quite difficult. You're able to do most of it with Accelerate, which makes it a lot faster. Basically, the idea is there's all these islands around the lake, and we need to collect totems that are found on the islands. So first jump with Accelerate is this one. We can skip right over to this island without even using Diamond Head, and you can see they're kind of pushing us towards it. You know, his face keeps popping up in front of the screen, but we don't need Diamond Head for this segment. We can just jump from island to island. We don't even visit like at least a dozen of these islands. It really is skipping quite a lot of what you would usually do. And this jump coming up here is a little bit difficult. This bit of ice looks really big, but there's only a really small part of it where you can actually jump onto it. We did it fine there, but harder than it looks. Geometry in this game can be weird. Most of it looks like you should be able to stand on it, but it actually behaves as though it's a slope, so you get pushed off into the water. And that's the end of Totem Track then. We use Heat Blast to jump up here. Normally you would use Wrath, he would climb on those like climbing holds. We don't have him, so we have to use that workaround.
This'll come in handy.
And now we have the second rock launch. We used to do this a different way where we'd climb like halfway up the mountain and then use the rock launch to do the rest. It turns out that you can just dip your feet into Linguini Lake and that's good enough to do the glitch. It's not as simple as it sounds. There's a lot of death planes high up the mountain that we need to avoid. There's also some weird invisible ceilings that I don't fully understand. Just another one of the like weird geometry things in this game, but it's pretty easy to avoid so long as you just like don't move around while you're ascending the mountain, because it generally what it is that moving towards the mountain on the way up is fastest, but it also puts you at risk of entering one of these areas, such as a death plane, which will end your run if you're going for like a PB. It's not quite so dramatic usually, but yeah, we're gonna gain like a lot of height here. We're probably gonna go for like 400 meters or so. You don't need to go quite that high, but just for like safety concerns, we want to make sure that we make this jump with room to spare, because missing it would lose like a minute or so. There we go, we make that jump quite comfortably, and we come up on the third boss in the game. Everybody say hi, Wrath. It turns out that because you're supposed to play as Wrath during this segment, the game just sets you to play as Wrath. We still don't have him unlocked. As soon as I transform into Diamond Head, we're gonna have to say goodbye to Wrath. But right now, we get to play as him, and that's really exciting. Okay, everyone say bye, Wrath. The trouble with this boss fight is that we only have one alien. We're supposed to have Wrath, we don't. We only have Diamond Head. It means we can't cancel any of our attacks, which means we have to go through the lengthy ending animation on his attacks. It's not all so bad, because these crystals for some reason don't incur a cutscene. In every other boss fight, breaking the crystal has a cutscene associated with it. For some reason in this boss fight there are no cutscenes, so it kind of makes up for the lost time anyway. So yeah, during this boss we're just going to spam his like area of effect attack. His area of effective attack just so happens to also be his like highest damage output attack. It's pretty good that this comes at the end of the, or close to the end of the run, not at the end of the run, because this is where we have all our damage upgrades, and we've got our damage temporary boost. And this boost will actually carry over into the next segment, because there's a combat segment coming up real quick. We need to go back to the ranger station, the tutorial area that we broke out of bounds of earlier. And it's a pretty good thing that we play the whole game out of bounds, because it means that we can just run right into the death plane to teleport straight to where we need to be. And this is the part of the run where any percent begins. The way the glitch works in any percent is that during the start of the run, there's a little bit of time where you're able to move around before the first cutscene. And if you're able to talk to Gwen during that little period, for some reason she just gives you the last quest of the game, the one that we're about to get now. So this roundabout where we are now is where any percent begins, which is a pretty mind-blowing difference. For a lot of like time we joked about skipping to the last mission, because it takes place at the castle where Hex stays, and you can actually clip inside the castle. There's just no loading trigger there. So we joked about it, but it turns out that the skip is actually real. So we talk to Gwen, and she tells us to go to the swamp. There's a spell book in the swamp, and that's going to help us to defeat Hex. So we go over here, and we have a little combat segment before the 3 trials. The 3 trials are segments where you play as 2 aliens each. Overcome some challenges, and when you beat all of them, you unlock the upgrades to the Omnitrix. It's called the Omni Guard. It serves no gameplay purpose, it's just like a trinket that you need to beat the game with. overall, pretty important. As you can see here, this becomes like the point where we don't really mind flying enemies because we can just kill them. We have enough damage output to just do that. And now we run over to the Circle of Stones, which is where the trials begin. Interestingly about the trials here is we don't have Wrath for the one where we're supposed to have Wrath. And there's a really difficult jump we need to do with Accelerate that has killed many a run. And I think a lot of new runners have been put off from the game because of this jump. It's really not that hard, but it relies on the awkward geometry that usually we sort of like don't like. We need to rely on that to work with us here at the beginning of Trial C. So the idea is that we are trying to jump up onto one of these turrets. You can see them all around us. They have these little black diamonds on them, and those actually have collision. So what we're going to try to do is jump onto the side of that, and it actually counts as a slope, which pushes us up, but it's a very small area, so it doesn't always work. So this is that jump. So we have to get onto the stones here and then jump around up onto those black diamonds. And there's another one here, which is arguably harder. See, I fell there. Actually put me right back to the start. Usually you would get a checkpoint when you get up to the first one, but I guess I didn't stand in the right place for the game to want to cooperate with me there. Really? Okay, there we go. Gonna jump back here. Get a good line up. And there we go. We got over it. It's not too tricky, but I remember when I first ran this game, my first ever run, I spent 8 minutes trying to do that jump. I didn't understand it as well as I did now. I was just kind of throwing myself at the wall and hoping to get up. That's why a lot of the early world records are like an hour and 20 minutes. A lot of it is just wasted on stuff like this, where you know the jump's possible, but you don't quite understand why. Now we have another combat segment where we only have one alien, but if we're going to be stuck with one alien, we'd love it to be Accelerate, because Accelerate can one-shot enemies. We're also going to use a damage upgrade and a toughness upgrade here. We get given a toughness upgrade at the start of one of the boss fights for free, and the reason I use it here is because we are at a real risk of dying during the Heat Blast and Diamond Head trial. The reason for that is because there's a lot of flying enemies that shoot projectiles during that segment. They actually do quite a lot of damage because we have no health upgrades. And I just want to be extra sure that I'm not at risk of dying there. You'll notice that I can stun these guys by hitting them in the front, and I left one enemy behind. During this period where like I've killed one of the enemies but the cutscene to destroy the crystal hasn't played, you can still destroy the crystal and it'll soft lock the game. I found that out on PB Pace, so it was pretty heartbreaking that for some reason I just couldn't interact with NPCs or do attacks or anything. It's a pretty bad bug that they still haven't fixed. I guess like nobody emailed them about it, but it's weird. This game doesn't seem like the kind of game that would have you know, post-release support, but it does. And I'm thankful for that because it gave us an 11-second time save. And so I talked about Diamond Head being pretty broken. This is an example of that. We start off right at the top of the level, and we can just kind of slide on like halfway through the whole level without touching any of these islands, which is pretty useful because all of these islands have combat segments with flying enemies that shoot projectiles, and while you don't need to defeat them, they can hit you out of the air if you get too close. So it's pretty good that we're able to skip that. Diamond Head's sliding speed is actually faster than Heat Blast's walking speed, so it's pretty optimal to use Diamond Head throughout this segment without like using Heat Blast as much, but I do use Heat Blast for that bit just because it makes the jumps easier. And here's another example where we can just completely skip content. Okay, I failed it there, but you can completely skip this segment where normally you would have to light some torches on fire, and we don't have to do that because we can just go around the door. So yeah, this combat segment is especially brutal in any percent. It takes several more minutes just because our damage output is so low and we have to worry about dying. You'll notice that Diamond Head has this really good multi-hit ability, does a lot of damage, but it's also at the end of his combo, which makes it pretty impractical to use. These enemies send out a lot of projectiles. The reason it's designed in this way is because Diamond Head is able to reflect projectiles with his shield, but it's also really slow, which is why we don't do it. And there's still one alive. These guys can teleport around, so it's easy to miss them if they get out of sight. So, coming up next is the Shock Rock and Forearms trial. This one's pretty simple. It's also like the shortest. We're just going to do a bunch of Shock Rock launches to skip all of the stuff that would usually use forearms. So if you have anything to say or read, this would be a perfect time to do it.
I can absolutely do so, yes. I would like to encourage people to donate as much as they wish, but there are reasons to do so more than just being an absolutely fantastic human being, because we have a couple of prizes that are up for draw. If you are to donate a minimum of $15, then you will be entered into a draw to get yourself a UKSG Classic Zipped hoodie in size large. Oh, you didn't hear anything. And if you bump that up to $20, then you will also be in a draw for a Displate poster, medium standard design of your choice. Yes, it's a very good reward that we are going to be offering for you. And if you just wish to see good runs, then we also have incentives in addition to the Ghostbusters run that I shouted out earlier that will be for our next run coming up here in a few minutes. Then there is, in addition to that, the Barber as You alternate ending incentive, wherein the runner Ruffled Bricks will be playing a normally skipped level with a blindfold on. It should be a good time if we can get there. We are $100.80 shy of that goal. I believe we can make that before that run comes up in a few hours here. Alright then, let's get back to the run. Take us home.
Alright, so this is one of the parts of the run where it becomes increasingly obvious. There's actually a hidden mechanic in the combat, which is that you will lock on to enemies. Most of the time you won't even notice it because the enemies that you're trying to attack are the ones that are right in front of you. But because there is a raised area and a lower area, if the enemies fall down onto the lower area and you're still targeted onto them, you try to hit them even though they're not in your range. It's the only time where that like hidden lock-on system actually ends up mattering in a speedrun. But it's kind of interesting that it's just like never explained and there's no graphic to go along with it. So in the next like 3 or 4 minutes we'll be coming up on time. We're gonna fight the final boss here, and yeah, the thing is with the final boss, it's very similar to all the other bosses in that you destroy the crystals and then you fight the boss one-on-one. It has 2 phases though. So I'm gonna defeat the boss once and then chase the boss to the final area where I'll defeat him again. All of that will go by pretty quickly, but I'll make sure to say when we're coming up on time. So this area is fairly annoying. All of the combat is really easy except for the fact that while Hex is up in that bubble, he's going to shoot fireballs at us, and sometimes he can be really aggressive with those fireballs, and it really interrupts the rest of what we're trying to do. The key here is like just don't die, because if you die you have to do all of the, you don't have to do all of the crystals again, but you have to do the crystal that you were doing. You have to restart. basically. So these fireballs don't seem too bad, but as we stay in the level, they'll get more aggressive. And sometimes he just decides that you die, and he'll just send like 12 fireballs right at your location. Obviously you can run away from them, but given the small spaces that you're in, sometimes it can be more difficult. And sometimes trying to dodge a fireball means jumping directly into an enemy that is primed to attack. So it's one of the more impactful examples of RNG in the run, but still overall very manageable. That's 2 of 3 crystals. This last one is definitely the hardest. It has 2 of these big enemies. And a lot of flying enemies, but like I said, we have enough damage upgrades to where the flying enemies don't bother us so much. As you can see, Hex is raining down fireballs that are going to become increasingly problematic the more enemies I have to fight. One thing that's good is that while you're standing on the big enemy, part of it will act as a shield from the fireballs. So while you can still get hit by them, they have a much lower success rate. And yeah, even the final boss isn't immune to Accelerate's ability to one-shot. We can kind of just stand next to him, and if we are overlapping the 2 bodies, he'll just get his health deleted. And this is actually the only chase segment in the whole game that we basically do vanilla. We're just going to run up in a straight line. I'm going to run to the right side here, because for some reason, if you do that, none of the fireballs will ever hit you, which is pretty useful. It's not like it's hard to dodge these, but it does lose time because you're not going in a straight line. And we'll be coming up on time really, really soon. Again, we're going to try to one-shot the boss just by standing next to him, but he will move around. And this laser attack can be particularly deadly because it's a multi-hit, and that's time. So yeah, that is Ben 10 Power Trip. You can catch me on Twitch TV/MelonKeeper, and shout out to the Ben 10 Power Trip community, everybody who's contributed like a find to this game, or just like watch me when I'm grinding for a PB. I really appreciate all of that. And I think this game's really cool. If you want to play it, it's pretty cheap on Steam, and it's also on Xbox Game Pass if you have that. So definitely check it out.
Alright, thank you very much once again for bringing us that incredible game. It was a delight to watch. People, we will be back here in just a few short moments with Destructiox playing Ghostbusters Special Edition. Before that, though, I want to shout out that we have a incentive, a bid war for you to put your money towards. There is character customization in this game, and there is all the power in your hands for not only which of the Ghostbusters characters we will be playing as, but what their uniform will be like. So, Egan fans, Winston fans, I'm calling you out. It's time to get generous. People who are fans of the color green, it's time to become generous. Currently, Ray will be the character being in a pink uniform. So, with that out of the way, look forward to it. Look forward to what we will see. I don't even know. It's great. It's really exciting. With that, though, I bid you adieu, and good luck with that run. Look forward to it.